Okay, so we are going to start. Let me present our speakers. From our side, it will be our lead project manager,
hi,
Eugen Tools, and our valuable client. His name is Turrell.
Hello, hello.
Yeah, also numerous interesting books for founders of startups. So probably, yeah, don't hesitate to write your questions on our chat. Mark definitely will answer to all of them. And we are going. Okay, so Eugen will tell you more about scaling mobile startups and to tell briefly about our company, how we assist to our clients to scale their startups in the best and very important right way. So thank you.
Yeah, basically we're gonna talk about the main steps or some general mistakes that people do when they start with the startups, but in more bigger examples, Marco will continue the talk. Okay. Yeah, so why should we do startups? Of course, this is generally known. We could earn some good batch of money, but I won't waste our time on the general numbers of how many apps are uploaded at the moment, how many are earning. And we'll go to the approaches. So one of the things that people overlook, and we often see this with the startups when people come to our company for development, is when they have their idea not tried in the market and they want to try it out and invest a huge bunch of money before really going through it with the team, with the developers. They're gonna try to push it to the market and of course the customers. So at the point when you have your general idea and try to brainstorm it, take all of your team and go through every story, every business logic that your idea has to get the first feedback. It is very important because on a pretty well-known example of the Airbnb, when they first started, they had a stop. They didn't really know where to move with their startup, and thankfully to the idea of their designer on the importance of photography of every room, they got it going. So it is very important idea of every team member of your team before you get investing on the features with the next releases. It's always important to, with the first releases, to look for the first customers' reviews, first customers' insights, first customers' advices on how they use your application and what they want to really see in this application, what they miss in the application, and it is very important on the next second, third iterations of your application to implement these features. So your real customers will use your app. It sometimes happens that your first idea of your startup isn't what really gives the success for your application. If you listen carefully to the customer, you will find your market. Of course, it is very important to get right people to your team, and it's very important to scale right, not hurry with the team members that you're hiring, and be very attentive to their ideas again, and their feedback on how exactly you run the business, especially if it's your first startup. How we work with startuppers in SEDUCTIVE. First, we get their idea, and it is very important to get the idea and decide what is exactly crucial in this idea, what is exactly the core of this idea, what is exactly will give the consumer the satisfaction with this idea, and to formulate it in real business logic, in real user stories. We get this idea through discovery stage. What is discovery stage? Discovery stage is exactly this process of taking core out of all the technical requirements that usually our clients have and formulating it into user stories, which we cover in business logic. We cover it in diagrams, and we test it out with whole of the team. By the team, I mean designers, I mean our technical directors, I mean our quality assistants. It is very important that QA guys will take part in this discovery phase, because these guys, they taste every product that we develop, and they have a really keen eye on what is exactly could go wrong with the logic that is put. After the business logic is concrete, we go into the development with the core minimal viable product features. And only after that, we get to the market, and only after getting what exactly consumer wants, we can estimate and see where exactly go with scaling of your idea and getting to the success of this app. Of course, there are many general things that you should take into account when going with your startup. Is like fast reaction to the market. With every new fix and every new small iterations of your applications, you should react to every customer that you have. You should understand your precise fit to the market with the key features. You should take into account, besides monetization, which is a big question. It's a big separate question that is not for discussion on the scaling, but the thing that you should take into account is architecture. And depending on your product, you should understand what exactly you should build into for the first short period. If it's an application that you're not sure and you want to try it on the market for the low budget, you should definitely go with ready backend solutions like Parse. It suits for MVP that are not expected to be highly loaded. It's perfect for small budgets. It's perfect for first 2-3 months of trying and discovering your customer. It's perfect to build minimal product that you can try on investments. On the other hand, if you are sure on your idea, and if you have pretty stable plan for the next year, you should not use Parse. Helen, please.
Okay, so, and I also add like slide regarding with it's like not right backend solution, and for what it will lead you to. First of all, probably your features requests will be processed very slowly. It's because not definitely the right backend solution. Definitely on parse so the minimum time that is required is just 1 second. So for instance, if you are choosing parse for more than 5K users, so in this case, such requests will be processed in more than 1 second. Definitely, it will be annoying for your users. So it's not like a good solution. Slow product development. So it's like I think result that will cause like not right backend solution for founders of startup. So you will develop your product very slowly, and it can lead to additional development costs. For instance, it's good when you're going just to test here, I mean like parse solution, but if we're talking about, for instance, fintech projects, and you're going to start it with parse backends, definitely it will not work. And even you need to record whole backend from scratch, and it will cause additional development costs. Yeah, and probably it's like, yeah, the end from our side. In case you want to get in touch, so you see my credentials, and let me present our next speaker. It will be Mark Turrell. He's also our client. We're working together on his startup. Probably I will switch on camera. We'll proceed, and then I will switch off his presentation, and I will switch on camera. So we'll make like dialogue with Mark and discuss all your questions. So Mark will proceed and tell you more about scaling of startups, his experience, because he's also founder of his own project, Vork. So Mark, take your time.
Great background, Sam. I'm just going to stick in my headphones right now so I can make it noise a little bit better. But now let's just talk a little bit about scaling. And at this point then, I can mention some words about, sadly, one of the world's best-selling books, and that is 50 Shades of Grey. I don't know how many of you have read 50 Shades of Grey. You don't have to read 50 Shades of Grey, don't worry. 50 Shades of Grey for me has been fascinating as a book because it's a $2 billion business written by a woman who'd never written anything before, pretty much. And yet this business that was produced relatively quickly was able to be one of the best-selling books of all history. Even the movie is one of the top 50 top-grossing selling movies of all time. It is remarkable. But I can share with you some of the tips how, just from this case study. So, I mean, very quickly, at 50 Shades of Scaling, when she wrote her book, she used the power of the crowd. So she actually began to publish her book for free on fan fiction websites, fanfic.net and Twilighted, and that meant that she was able to get feedback from, she got 36,000 feedback comments from people all around the world. What it meant was she was able to harness the power of the crowd, both in helping tune her writing, not that it helped, but certainly to get feedback around, let's say, how would a sort of power couple in the US behave, what would they do? So using beta readers effectively. Using the power of the crowd helped come up with a title for the book. Originally, her book was called The Master of the Universe. What eventually happened was that in around chapter 14 of the book, there's a mention about, hey, I'd like to stroke you, but don't touch me because I'm 50 shades of up. So the fans loved that so much on the fan sites that actually became the title of the book, 50 Shades of Grey. Other things that she did is that she wrote off a platform. So right now she took a platform that was super popular, which is Twilight, and when she began to actually do her writing, she created an alternate universe version of Twilight. So it's a little bit like if you like Harry Potter and you want to write your own version of a Harry Potter story. Well, this is very clever because to scale, she took a platform that already existed and used that to scale. Now, clearly what this means for us today building applications, it may be that we use authentication from Facebook, which allows us to use something that is already being used by 2 billion users, and it gives us access to data such as pictures, social graph information. In the past, maybe we had to build these pieces of functionality ourselves. Now, however, we're able to take advantage of an existing platform. These are really good tactics. Other things then that I can mention, and for example, if we look at the cover of the book, 50 Shades of Grey, when it first came out, in most of its markets, it was black with a tie on it. Well, this is an example of what I call an infectious idea. And one of the things that I advise startups and people building product is working out how to make your application infectious. Now, what does this mean? In the case of 50 Shades of Grey, she was trying to work out, and the publishers were trying to work out, how can we get this book out there into the market as much as possible? It turns out, oh, by the way, if you don't know what 50 Shades of Grey is, it's an office romance with whips and chains. The thing is that that type of book typically might have, let's say, be fairly explicit. Well, this book was pretty much black with a tie on it. You have no idea what's in this book. In fact, I actually genuinely bought the first book thinking that it might be some sort of business advice book that people told me to read about. I had no idea what the contents was. But this means that it was actually packaged to be infectious. Now, let's look at what this means if you're building product. It means you've got to work out how does an individual using your thing, how can they infect other people? This could be share a link. This could be building applications that naturally have network effect. These are all scaling axes. Now, I could go on, sadly, for quite a long time talking about 50 Shades of Grey, but I'd like to open up for questions. But just to finish off this, there is the book called Scaling. It is simply called Scaling. It's available on Amazon, on Kindle, and on paperback as well. And within the Scaling book, it pretty much shows you, gives you a method of designing your own scaling plan. And it's based around 26 scaling frames. These are different ways, specific ways of looking at your business, looking at what you're trying to achieve to generate ideas. There's about 80 case studies in there as well to spring them to life. And just to pick out 4 of the examples here, I took about setting targets. If you are to scale a business, you need to know how big, how far, how quickly. That then helps you work out what tactics to use. Very, very big into the use of networks. And the book really covers a lot in that, and there's some good stuff in the worksheet as well. That then allows you to say, well, okay, how do you, instead of finding users one by one, how do you take advantage of network effects? How can you tap into networks of people that already exist? Balancing control is another one. When you're building your application, how much do you, as a user, define for other people's to use, and how much do the users figure it out for themselves? And then there's catching the wave. Sometimes right now you just sort of seem to have the perfect product at the perfect time. The thing is that that's actually relatively unlikely. The real secret is that you need to have good marketing people that are able to know your product, know what it is that you want to achieve, and when there's a moment, a spark, a wave that basically occurs, you can pretty much jump onto that. So as I say, there's much store stuff in the scaling book. I'd like to open this up for questions now if possible, because we don't have too much time. And definitely please stay in touch with me. Hopefully you can explore Vork. And thank you very much to Seductive for the opportunity to have this chat with you. Thank you.
Yeah, so probably we had some problem, yeah, with today with connection. I can do it. And that's why our connection on the webinar was lost, probably because of bad weather today. We'll see. But definitely, I've got some questions from our audience. Most of them, they are like founders of startups, and they have questions related to the most common mistakes. Yeah, definitely we heard more. Lots of similar questions, but
okay, most common mistakes. Well, I mean, so first of all, I think that we need to. So in your head, you need to think about setbacks rather than making mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to make loads of mistakes. The thing is, as long as you're not dead and you're still kind of moving along,
mm-hmm.
these things are just setbacks.
Yeah.
Now, things where you don't want to make the same mistake twice.
Mm-hmm.
You're allowed to make different mistakes,
yeah.
but you shouldn't make the same mistake twice. If I look at biggest mistakes, though, first one that I mentioned at the beginning is you forget about your customer. If you forget about the customer, you kind of deserve to be dead in the first place,
mm-hmm.
as in business-wise dead.
Yep.
Because that means that if you forget who you're building for, then you're no good.
Mm-hmm.
You forget to have empathy for the customer. So I think that there's a desire, particularly if you're more of a technical founder, to sort of
mm-hmm.
push people into doing things, but it doesn't mean to say that it makes sense. You have to sort of understand who your users are, get into their heads.
Mm-hmm.
Other things, I think the easiest thing that I see is people do forget to execute.
Yeah.
If you like, it's so happy being in whatever startup mode and it's really, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
You need to like map everything out on a timeline and say, well, okay, every day we need to do something. So I think that's partially because at a startup phase, you're very you're still developing your ideas. You're still you don't quite know what you have, and so therefore to wait 2 or 3 days isn't a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
However, quite quickly, 2 or 3 days could become 4 weeks, and you've done nothing.
Yeah.
But it feels cool. Yeah. So that's another mistake. Another one is not counting, so you don't know how much money you have,
yeah.
and you run out of money.
Like, by the way, it's like the second question: how to predict my expenses? Yeah, for scaling. Yeah. Expenses, yeah.
Well, actually, I mean, if we divide up the expense, I mean, if you look at, let's say, how do you predict your expenses anyway, and how do you predict your startup expenses versus the scaling expenses?
Yep.
I think for the startup expenses, you're actually better off working to a budget to say how much money do I have, and therefore you've limited how much money you're going to spend.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing. I think scale up is different, and in fact, so I'm working here in, I've been doing my sort of discovery workshop here this week with the team because I like to scale up Vork. So therefore I need a plan. Therefore I've spent a good week with whatever engineers, the CTO, UX design to redesign the application to see, well, okay, and then at the end of it, I'm very fortunate, so at the end of this week, I now have a budget. I kind of know how much time it'll take in terms of money and in terms of whatever timeline. And then I can work out, like, either I need to raise more money to be able to do it, or this is the budget that I have to play with, and then add on 25% for the angels.
Plus, I need to add like 20-30% for unpredicted. Yeah.
Yeah, I call it for the angels or devils. Yes.
Yeah, minimum 20.
Well, and I think, I mean, in being realistic, so then you take the technology costs, and then if you're in scale-up mode, your technology costs will be between, let's say, 30% and 65% of what you spend, because you need to start spending money on marketing. It's really easy to forget about marketing.
Yep.
The thing is that if nobody knows that your product exists, you won't have any users. If they know how your product exists, but there's no business model in it, you won't have any revenue.
Yep.
Easy stuff. Most people screw up on the easy stuff, not on the hard stuff.
Yeah. Very interesting question. I got questions from our clients.
Okay.
He's asking about team. Do you have a team who is growing together with you, or are you going to have such team? So people who will share the same ideas, visions, and etc. etc.
So I mean, I think this team question is super interesting.
Yeah. How do you find the right people?
Well, I mean, I think there's how do you find the right people, and then there's what type of shape does a team take. So already right now, I mean, for my company, I'm following the Hollywood model of business. Now, what does that mean? It means that in Hollywood, it used to be that the stars owned the land, they owned the buildings, they even owned the celebrities themselves. Now, a Hollywood movie studio doesn't even own the movie. They own the rights to the movie. So what I've been looking at myself, and I've done some talks with a lot of big companies in Europe on this, is could we rethink the way of doing business altogether? So in my company, Vork, I actually don't have a single full-time employee. I'm not employed by my own company. But that's because then I have got a team member, but I have team members who are really doing real proper work in New Zealand, in Ukraine, and then different places. So I think this is one thing, is your sense of team. Now, what you will have is there's a certain moment when you need to scale to make it grow bigger. And so then, again, then it means you are looking at getting, let's say, core team members who know what they're doing, or you can train them to then actually execute at scale. So that's a more tricky thing. I've been having actually lots of, one of my friends is at Facebook, and we were chatting about how do you hire, let's say, expensive people. And it turns out very often you make mistakes. So one of the things that I've been doing, and I actually did this when I started working with SEDUCTIVE folk as well, is I give people tests all the time. So now for me, a test when I was working with a development company is to say, okay, let's start with a very short workshop, there's a short discovery and a deliverable, this time, this budget, let's see what you have. And results. And so, and the thing is that if we'd have started, let's say, a week late, and it wasn't my fault, it was your fault, then I wouldn't have worked with you. Well, the thing is, you can use this as well as hiring team members. A lot of people might say all of the right things to get employed, but then not actually deliver anything. So what I do when I'm looking at, right now as I'm beginning to span the Vork team, is that I'm working out what jobs do I need done, and then I give people tasks with or without their knowledge to say, okay, can you please do this for me in whatever 1 or 2 hours, and then I want to see how you work. And some people totally screw up. Now, this is a fantastic thing. And absolutely, because as an employer, if I'm basically hiring people to do a job, I think more like a German, even though I live in Germany. I think more like a German in this. Just do your job.
On time.
On time, but just do your job, because everybody else is relying on you as a piece of like a piece of a machine. Your job is to do this, and if you don't do this, the whole machine could break down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think this is something that I'm really looking at, is how do you filter to get the people that will fit properly? But then you need to make sure that you also have disciplines inside the company, methods, processes, metrics. There's all kinds of other structures that you need.
Yeah, that's right. Also, we were talking about the right solutions. Yeah, I mean, like backend solution, and definitely such important decisions. Yeah, should have been done in the beginning of the project. And it's very important as well for scaling.
Well, actually, but very.
Do you trust the development team or some like such? Yes, very important. Yeah, decisions were done by yourself.
So I would. The thing is that if you're building if you're building a prototype or an MVP or a scaling thing, you may end up with fundamentally different backends. And what happens is that if you choose, let's say, a backend at the beginning, which is like a really big, meaty backend, it'll cost you more time and more money.
Yeah.
But you have to remember the reason why you did the front end, the MVP, was to get feedback from the market.
Yeah.
I think because right now, with my application that we're building right now, we will end up from the MVP stage replacing at least 50% of the code, if not actually rewriting the code.
Yeah.
Because it's much, much cheaper going from, let's say, the MVP that we had to cut a lot of corners, rewriting it, and then building it with a different environment afterwards. If you like I'd like to optimize my MVP spend to not spend a single penny more than I have to.
Yeah.
But at the next stage, though, if you don't change your environment, if you don't change your architecture, you get stuck with a whole bunch of crap that's really expensive to manage later. So in fact, what I've been using, and the advice here with the guys here, is to then say, well, okay, here's the system. We designed it for, let's say, 50,000 users. It's working really well. If we need to have something that goes for 10 million users, what does it look like? Where is it going to break? And there's a very interesting exercise that we did where we mapped out the existing architecture. I then shared the vision that I have and about what should happen next. And then we were able to rebuild the architecture based on this new knowledge.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so we don't have time. Yeah, so we need to finish our webinar. So we will send to all our guests link for book. Yeah, for your book it's sold on Amazon, so you can download it without any obstacles. By the way, Mark, you also wrote me that you have the second edition of this book.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 2 editions. Yeah.
It's pretty much the same. So it's the book that's on Amazon right now. If you get that, and then I've also got hardback copies as well. But then I need to get an email.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mark, for your time.
It is good. It's my pleasure. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks, guys, for looking at us. See you.
Ciao, ciao. Bye.
Bye.
And good luck.
Good luck. Scale your startup in the right way.